Alrighty, hello everybody, welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, hi, my name is Bash Harry, this is the Harry Knit, and we're doing a knit and chat today. I've got my knitting, this is the Sunflower Rises, I believe, by Stone Knits, and I wanted to sit down and knit because I don't think I've done it in quite some time. I always say that. I usually try to think about what I'm going to say, so I write down notes, but and I did for this video because I wanted it to be more, what's the word I'm looking for? More cohesive, because whenever I do knit and chat, sometimes I just yap about and then I never really get to the point that I was trying to make. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about my 2025 knitting goals. I made a video similar to this, I think in 2021, 2022, for my 2022 goals, and then I did one earlier this year about my 2024 knitting goals. I have not watched that video back. I don't know whether it's still relevant. I think it's really good to make videos like this to kind of reflect what my mindset is now and what's it going to be maybe in a year's time, because this was the year essentially where I focused a lot on the Harry Knit, in terms of YouTube videos, in terms of content, whether it was here or on Instagram or knitting patterns. So I thought it would be interesting to do a 2025 knitting goals, specifically with what I want to do in my knits, whether that's with new techniques or new skills that I would love to learn in the future, or even the stuff that I want to do for the business, because the Harry Knit is considered a small business, which is wild. And it's small business because I've been doing this, I think officially decided to make it a small business for about a year now, and it's been pretty interesting. It's been really fun. I come from a very small country, Brunei, where there's not a lot of knitters, and we've been trying really hard to make a community for crafters, especially. 2025 is just to continue further that and hopefully make it a lot more accessible to people in this region of the world. I always see people talk about yarn shops and knitting clubs or craft nights in other countries, and I feel like that's so incredible, and I want to establish something like that here in my country and make it a more collaborative experience, because I know I'm not the first one to do it. I know my mom and other people of older generations have been doing this for decades now, but I've noticed that there's some gaps, the generational gaps between the youths and the adults, and I hope one day we're able to bridge that. Whole tangent aside, this is the video where we just knit and chat and talk about our knitting goals. And if you have any knitting goals, feel free to list them down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, what you plan on doing in 2025. I remember my old video, I think in my 2022 goals, I was talking about I wanted to make, 22 pieces for 2022. That is not going to be that kind of video. I don't think I've knitted as much as 22 pieces this year. It's more about quality over quantity now for me, which is fine, because I'm designing a lot more pieces, which means I'm frogging a lot more pieces. So yeah, I think that's what we're going to talk about. Also, before we get started on this video, I am wearing the Rehat sweater that recently came out. You can find it on the Ravelry and Ko-fi. If you're a beginner knitter, this is a really great one. It's a drop shoulder. It's kind of like the Rehat sweater. This one's chunkier sister, I like to call her. It's been a really sad season for Brunei this month. It's monsoon season, so there's a lot of rain. The roads are wet, cold and damp and humid. So I thought, you know what, why not wear a sweater and really experience the true wet summer weather we always experience. All of that to say, let's just knit and yap. Let's chat, shall we? Okay, I've written some stuff here. I don't know how long it's going to take me to talk about it, but we're going to get through this because I basically only have about 30 minutes to yap before I feel the ibuprofen that I'm having right now lose its effects, because I've been feeling a bit sick today. And the first one here that I want is focusing on creativity and skills, which is I want to learn more advanced techniques. I love doing intarsia. I love doing color work, so I think I'm pretty good at that. But one thing that I've been really intrigued by lately, and I want to develop that skill more, is to learn brioche and double knitting. I know double knitting in theory, like I know the steps, I know the concept, but I've never really made a whole piece in double knitting. So I'd really like to try that out, especially with like color work front and back. I think would look really nice in double knitting. So I'm looking through patterns to see what I can make. A lot of them seem to be like graphs, or they're like, I'm trying to give another example, or like scarves. So I want to hopefully make one in case I'm traveling to somewhere cold again next year. I didn't manage to wear any of my scarves to my honeymoon during the winter in Australia, but that was also because I didn't make any scarves. I think that would have been a perfect opportunity to knit the Sophie scarf, but alas, what can you do? I really want to start learning how to do double knitting. And I also want to learn how to do brioche. I have a pattern that was given to me for free as a gift for doing the pattern for a test knit for Lily Kate Makes. I got her vest, and I forgot what it's called now because it's been a while. But I know that vest is made using brioche knitting, and I'm really curious on how I can start learning how to do brioche. For some reason, I think of it as like bread. That's like the first thing that pops into my mind. I've always been really nervous about doing brioche just because like it didn't seem like it would fit for my weather. It's very squishy, it's very thick, but I think a brioche vest would be a great way to start learning how to make it, especially since that's something that I like to do. Vests and tops are the easiest thing for me to wear here in this country, in this climate, because it's pretty easy to take off it if it is getting too hot. And I like making tops. I want to make more of them, to be honest. I feel like I've been on a t-shirt spree lately. I think I want to learn more brioche and more design techniques. And going on from that, I want to be better in sweater construction and figure out more techniques to do inside my designs. I love a drop shoulder. I've made 2 drop shoulder sweaters right now, this one and the Rehat Sweater. Now I want to learn how to do raglans. I want to learn how to do like top-down vests, which I have done. It's currently in grading right now. I decided to ask someone for help with the grading because it was just way too intense. But I want to learn more about sweater construction and learn more about designs for sweater because I find them so fascinating and interesting. There have been some books that I've been eyeing on. I'm probably not going to Singapore with my husband in January, but he is going to get me some books from Kinokuniya, which is a great bookstore in Singapore and Malaysia if you guys are ever there. The Singaporeans know, I'm sure. But yeah, I just want to be more knowledgeable in sweater construction, more knowledgeable in design and the elements and what makes a good pattern. Sometimes I feel like it's a hit to the self-esteem because like I've been knitting for so long, I should know these things, but I don't. I don't. I want to learn more about shaping and being inclusive to different sizes and how to calculate bust start shapings for people with larger busts than me. These are things and elements that I feel make a great designer. A lot of the designers that I admire also include these, and I hope in the future I can too. That the designs that I make are appropriate for everybody. These are some things that I want to do in terms of my creativity, my skills, just making sure I'm like a better knitter than I can be. And then another thing that I wanted to talk about was my community events here locally. Like I said earlier, we don't really have a space for crafters or creatives that is like just for the art of crafting. We do have handicraft centers, so we do a lot of weaving and tununan designs here in Brunei, but knitting and crochet. There are a lot of crocheters here in Brunei. I'm not going to say there aren't any. There's not as many knitters that I've met, but I know people who have tried. But I'd like to host a lot more knitting events. whether that is organizing workshops, which I do sometimes here in my country, hosting knit-alongs, maybe online, who knows, or here in Brunei. And I'd rather do a lot more meetups. We host craft clubs sometimes, and they've been really fun. And sometimes I've been really nervous about organizing them because, like, who am I to do it? Like, honestly, I'm nobody. But I realize that, like, if you want to see something happen, you should be proactive and do it. One of the things that I did this year that I'm really proud of was organizing a crafters market. And that was started because some friends of mine who do sewing and candles and perfumes, they were saying how they couldn't really do pop-ups here in Brunei, or if they did, it wasn't really dedicated for them because the pop-ups they would be going to would be specifically for F&Bs or clothing, and it was really hard to find that audience. I reached out to a craftswork organization here in Brunei, and I was like, hey, can we collaborate and do a crafters market? That was really great. The turnout was amazing. It was like I don't know, I think like 1,400 people, which for some people, like, I've been to the sheep woolen show in Australia. There was like 100,000 people. That was a lot of people. We do not have that number in Brunei. 1,400 people in 2 days was actually pretty impressive, I think. It was pretty nice considering that we had no sponsors. It was a very low cost event. Okay, I won't say it was low cost. The cost of rental, venue, and permits and everything, that was expensive. But you know, we did not make a loss, which was good. But I really felt so happy with the turnout and knowing that there were crafters here in Brunei who felt seen and that they felt taken care of, which I thought was really important because I know that I did my first pop-up and I felt like a failure almost, that I was trying so hard to sell these pieces that were only like $7 or $5 and nobody was buying them. But then I went and organized the crafters market and then people were buying them. People wanted to learn how to make their own plushies and I was so happy to see that happen. So I want to capture that feeling again of designing things and hopefully selling it to people. We sold quite a few of the Ahad bags, which I'm really happy about. And we also made some little tiny keychains and things to sell to people, and I was really happy about that. I did not make a vlog about it, but I feel like I should start vlogging more just because I sometimes feel like I don't really remember the things that I do, and I should really vlog important memories of my life because 5 years from now I can look back on it and be like, oh yeah, I did that. That was cool. But yeah, I would like to host more events. And on top of that, another goal that I have is to have a consistent space. I talked about this, I think, in my previous podcast. My studio got mold. I think it was because of the weather, and it has to do with the humidity of the place. It was the carpets. So I was very frustrated. Oh, that was where I usually teach classes, but after talking about it with my husband, talking about it with some other people, I think it was decided that I was going to look for a studio space. I'm not going to say any more, but we found a space. It's a shared collective full of business women and creatives, and I'm really excited to share it with you when the time comes. And that space is where I could probably dedicate my time to the Hairy Knit and to other future things that we want to do. And also, I feel like I won't feel so lonely. As much as I consider myself an introvert and that I like staying at home most days, I recognize the fact that perhaps staying at home every day, working on your knits, and staring in a computer without any social contact from anyone, probably not the most conducive to your mental health. And I am going to start sharing a space with other creatives. So hopefully my brain doesn't go absolutely mental after. And that's exciting to me. And hopefully we can host more workshops there. We can do classes there. We can do craft clubs. These are all ideas that I have that I don't know will pan out yet. But having a studio space, I think, would be pretty good. And on top of that, about having a consistent space is I want to launch a website. This is also partly for me and expenses and income, and also because I think it's time to actually have a website for me to really showcase the work. Ravelry and Ko-fi can only do so much when it comes to showcasing the patterns. I'd like a specific space to show the designs and add more details. And also I miss blogging. I do. I used to run a blog back in like 2015 until 2020, and then I since stopped doing that. So I don't really have a space for me to write, even though I love writing. I think with a website, we are fine-tuning the options and we're figuring out how to display it. But it would be really nice to have a dedicated site specifically for my patterns and maybe other stuff in the future. Who knows? Wink, wink, hint, hint. But speaking of that, I do want to start creating more merch. I don't know if merch is the word. I think a subsidiary, that sounds too businessy. That sounds too fancy. I'd like to create more physical products other than digital patterns. As much as I do love digital patterns and writing patterns up, I do also want to give back my community and hopefully make some items for them. I've been getting back into sewing. Not very well, I will admit. I am interested in maybe producing and manufacturing my works, especially when meeting different manufacturers here in Brunei owned by women and supported by women. I'd really like to find a space for them to create. I think having merch that anyone, not just knitters, can use would really be incredible. I think right now I'm thinking tote bags, but in the future, I don't know, maybe caps, maybe t-shirts, maybe journals. I have so many journals because I think they're really fun. I don't know whether I'd be able to sell them internationally simply because the shipping rates here in Brunei are wild. But that's a whole other topic for a whole other day. You can hear any Bruneian yap about how shipping in Brunei is very expensive. I think shipping, like, I remember talking about it with a friend. She like designs or makes soaps and body care and skincare. Doing a container, I think, is going to cost up to the 4-figure range. And I'm like, dang, that is a lot of money. I don't know if we're going to do it internationally, maybe regionally, but if you would buy tote bags or merch from me that were super cute, please let me know and maybe we can work out together. That would be fun. But yeah, I think those are some things that I would like to include in the Hairy Knit ecosystem, which sounds overwhelming, yes. And I'm not gonna lie, I've been feeling overwhelmed for the past few days. One, because I'm sick, and also because I think with December rolling around, there's a lot of events and stuff happening that I'm still trying to get my bearings across from everything. I think that's the plan. Now I kind of want to steer away from that and talk a bit more, I think personably, maybe? I have been thinking a lot about hosting a charity knit. I'd like that to be a future goal for me in 2025, is to host a charity knit or a crochet or craft charity knit. Craft charity event, I think, is a better term. My mom has done this before with her crochet group, and I think it would be really great if we created or organized a project to knit for a cause, maybe working with the Children Development Center or working with the local hospital here, Ripas. I think it would be really amazing. And I really want to get back into it. I think I have a lot of yarn, and I think it would be a really great opportunity to use up that yarn for something special. I need to figure out the kinks for that. Maybe we would be able to do like one day where we're just making hats together, or maybe even blankets. I think would be absolutely fun to host and organize, especially for a good cause. I mean, there's so many people here who craft in Brunei, and I think it's one way that we're able to give back to the community and to the healthcare system specifically. I'd also like to do more events like that. I recently did a road show with the Child Development Center, and they were just doing one specifically about reducing screen time for kids. And we had a booth and we were teaching kids how to knit. We were saying, hey, we have a knitting workshop happening, but if you want to learn we can teach you right now. So I also brought my Centro knitting machine. I don't use it as much, especially for this channel, but I think it's a really great way to introduce kids to knitting without giving them a pair of sharp needles, because there's no way I'm going to give a kid 2mm needles for socks. Somebody's going to get stabbed, and the likelihood is it's probably going to be me. But a knitting machine, I think, is really great, and I've made up a pattern for the kids to follow so they can make their own cats, and I think that's really, really cute. I also want to maybe start teaching kids how to do like finger knitting, even loom knitting. I think that's how I first started knitting, was using looms, and then I got into knitting properly. If it's a way to reduce children's screen time is to teach them how to knit or do something with their hands, I think it's really important, especially since knitting has helped me so much reduce my screen time. I do not go on my phone as often, especially if I'm out and about and I have like a few hours or a few minutes to kill. I'm not on my phone. I am knitting this sock because stockinette takes so freaking long. I think those are like my main goals, but one goal that I have in mind that doesn't really pertain to businessy stuff, actually I think I have two goals. They're more personal knitting goals that I'll just tack on here at the end of the video, which is one, I want to set aside time to knit. I tend to knit mostly in the mornings and the evenings. They're either stuff that I'm like knitting as a test knit or I'm designing something, but I've noticed that I'm not really consciously finding time to knit. So I would probably like to figure out time to knit throughout the day that's just for me knitting. Whether that is early in the morning, like after breakfast, I want to knit for 30 minutes before I get started with the day. I want to knit 30 minutes during lunchtime, and then I'll knit the rest of the evening. I want to dedicate some space for me to just enjoy my hobby, honestly. Yes, the hairy knit might be a business, but knitting is still a hobby that I want to enjoy, and I don't want it to feel like hard work. And I think that's like an issue a lot of artists and creatives, or anybody really, who gets into a passion and turns it into something that makes profit. It's very scary, and I wish we talked about it more, is that sometimes your passion gets bombarded with work and administration, and you kind of forget what makes you enjoy that hobby. There was a reason why I took a long break from knitting, and it was also because I was working full time. And I was not home until like maybe 6 or 7 p.m. and I was exhausted by then. So I had no time to knit. I want more time for myself. And another thing that I have as a mini personal goal is to document my journey when it comes to knitting. I have not been very good with Ravelry. I don't keep up to date with what I'm making on Ravelry, and I should do that more. There's a chichak somewhere. That's a lizard. We have a lot of house lizards here in Brunei. Go figure, I live next to a jungle. Yeah, I want to keep a knitting journal, which I do have, that I bought, and it only has maybe like 2 or 3 knits in there, but I do want to write down my thoughts about the projects that I'm working with. It's also, for me, I want to get back into journaling, not just my knits, but also the things that I do on a daily basis. I have a weekly planner, but I know that my brain gets jumbled up sometimes, and writing for 15 minutes helps a lot. I want to get back into tracking my memories and how I'm feeling. As sad as that sounds, I do miss writing about what I'm feeling and how I'm doing, like a diary entry that I post online sometimes. My mental health has been very well this year. All things considered, I am not as sad and depressed as I was when I was like 19, 20. But I reflect back on that time and I read the diary entries and the journal entries I've written. I commemorate those moments, and I want to do that again in the next 5 10 years of my life, whether that's documenting through YouTube or my journal entries. I really love to do that. And I think with knitting documentation, it kind of reminds me of how I was feeling at the moment and like all the things I'm doing. And also just, it's a good general practice to remember what changes you made in a pattern, which is why I also do the podcast. So I remember, oh, I did this, I did that, I did that. And so that helps me and hopefully helps you in the future too, in case you're watching and you're like thinking of making that sweater. Here are the modifications I made if it helps you. I think that is all my knitting goals. We shall see if I actually live up to them. I hope I do. I do would like to hold up to all these goals, at least 80% of them. I just want to ensure that I feel okay and that I feel like I am doing something important to myself. It doesn't have to be for the world. It doesn't have to be for anyone else. It just has to be for me. And if there's anything that you take from this video about knitting goals in the 30 minutes I've been yapping that I'm gonna have to edit, is that I think your knitting goals should reflect on the year or the type of person you want to become. But I'm saying that as a 27-year-old who makes YouTube videos on the internet, so take my advice with a grain of salt. I think that is it from me. I'm gonna finish this row off screen, but thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please do like, comment, and subscribe. There will be more videos, I promise. And yeah, I will see you soon. Also check out the mala sweater. I'm probably gonna like film in another location. Tangent incoming. Because this area, like I said, will probably be moved once I move to the actual proper studio collective. But we shall see. Okay. Bye!